Hello and welcome to Stuff TV. I'm your host, Nick Uzar, and I started this channel because I was curious how my very existence impacts the planet, and I found it really hard to find answers. So I decided to do something about it and talk to amazing thought leaders to help enlighten us. Today, I'm really excited to have Ryan Metzger, the CEO and founder of Ridwell, here with us. I'm a big Ridwell user. I love it. I'm a big fan of the business. And with that, Ryan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and your company?
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick. It's great to be here on, I think it's episode 2 of Stuff TV. So
Yeah,
to be an early guest. So as you mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Ridwell. We are a way for people to get rid of stuff in ways that are good for the environment and communities around them. So what we do is we find gaps that exist in your traditional recycling services, and we fill those gaps. So we pick up categories like plastic film and batteries and light bulbs and clothing and shoes, Christmas lights, styrofoam, the list goes on and on. We pick those up from you, from your porch every 2 weeks.
Yeah. And remind me how you started this business.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional. And you probably have an OfferUp founding story as well that may ring true to this as well, but just solving my own family's challenges, which was accumulation of stuff, which is why it's great to be on Stuff TV, and not really having a good way to get rid of it in ways that were true to our values. So my family, consists of 2 working parents and 2 fairly young kids. And so we accumulated lots of stuff and we would put it in a basement room, just kind of out of sight, out of mind, for when we could get around to taking the styrofoam 45 minutes south of us, when we could get around to taking the clothes to Goodwill, that kind of thing. And discovered that was really hard. It takes a lot of research, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of trips. And so what I did with my son, Owen, who at the time was 6, is we would pick a category, start small. I think that's something I encourage entrepreneurs all the time. Start small, solve a problem. And so we would pick a category every weekend. We would learn together what happens to styrofoam if you recycle it instead of throw it in the garbage. And then we would offer to pick up from neighbors on the way. Why just take our 1 block of styrofoam when we could fill up our car and do that? And that was just a little project we did, and it really caught on. I live in a neighborhood in Seattle, and before too long, we had thousands of people that were on our little waiting list of people to pick up from. So it was great to see that. We found that our need was not alone. We were not alone in our desire to keep things from landfills. We saw that it was fairly popular in our community. And then we saw that there was no one else doing anything about it, and kind of felt a sense of urgency to do something like this at scale and make a big difference in the world.
I was prepping for our conversation and digging into some stats, because I think some of the things that I know I feel is trying to personalize my impact. I'm always curious, like, what is my impact? And so an interesting stat I came across was the average amount of waste we will produce in our lifetime. And it's way bigger than you think. So it's 128,000 pounds per person.
Yeah.
Which is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So if you look at the average life expectancy in the US, 74 years old, times the number of people in the US, times 128,000, you get to like 42 trillion pounds of waste. And I think it just, I think most people, it's kind of out of sight and out of mind. And that's why I love using your service, because I didn't realize how much I was throwing in a landfill until I started using Ridwell, because there's that subset of things that you guys take, that you realize how much of it you actually have. And I think a lot of people also believe that recycling is, I'm putting stuff in the recycling bin and it's great and it's all getting recycled. It's only like 9%. Like the vast majority of things don't get recycled. So I think these are just interesting things that people need to just sometimes just have that perspective. And so I'd be curious, maybe just, digging a little bit more on your business, like maybe just kind of walk through the process and how it works.
Yeah, I think, you hit on a lot of the stats that were an inspiration to us too. And so we looked at those too and found, how can we fill the gaps that are there? And Owen and I, when we were doing our thing, we visited recycling centers, we visited a landfill, we saw all that stuff up close, and really saw from that there are items that people have in their home that just don't work in that traditional system. And so our service is really around finding a new way of getting rid of stuff in a new system of sorts that can keep them from landfills and make sure they get a second life and beyond. So how it works is we give people bags like this one here, and you as a customer, and remember, know that plastic film is one that gets used often. And so this lets people pre-sort, which is really important. Traditional recycling, you mix it all in one bin, maybe 2, depending on the city you're in. And so we give people bags to sort. So it's all kept with that same category. And so we have 5 a week typically that we let people use, different bags that they fill. Then we have a bin on people's porch. You let us know you want to pick up, and then we come and grab it. And what we do is we pick up your full bag of plastic film, and we leave an empty one in its place. And so you can then do that process again on a biweekly schedule. So that keeping it separate is really important. A lot of what makes things hard to recycle in the traditional system is when it's all mixed together. And so how can machines and humans and conveyor belts and magnets and all that stuff, how can they get things separate? That's really what's necessary to recycle things and to reuse them, frankly, is to have them separated so they can stay with that same category. And so our members play an increasingly important role in that by doing that pre-sorting. We also then do a lot around transparency and telling the story. You mentioned kind of out of sight, out of mind. That's the antithesis of what we believe. And we believe it's important to tell people, where does your plastic film go? And so we show you that it goes to Trex to get turned to the decking. Where do your batteries go? We tell you it goes to a certain partner in your market. So that's really how our service works. It starts with this pre-sorting. We've got a bin that people keep on their porch, and we come and get it, make it super easy, and then hopefully inspirational by telling that story of where everything goes.
Yeah, I really appreciate the bags, to your point, because then I know, like, I use the light bulb one, I use the battery one, the plastic one, and that's just so easy. I think part of the challenge we have is just a society is, when you think about just manufacturing and how things are built, they're built for a large audience, like a global audience. But disposal is a local, regional problem. In fact, I was fortunate once I got invited to this dinner with Bill Clinton at someone's house. And I'm like, I'm so excited. I get to meet a former president. And this is kind of when this is really top of mind for me. And this was the exact question I asked him was, hey, at a government level, why can't we do something to make it much easier to dispose of waste? Because he was talking about sustainability. Of course, he rambled on for 10 minutes like a true politician, never answered my question. But that, I was really just, I struggle a lot with what goes where. Because you can't answer that at a national level, because it depends where you live. Like my sister lives in Southern California, and she claims everything's all goes to one location, it's all separated out. I don't know. I just don't know how it works. I just know that the packaging is really confusing. It seems like there's got to be a better way for that. So I don't know if you have any thoughts around that, but
yeah, packaging has exploded. And, you look at charts of plastic production, which is a lot of what packaging is made of, is plastic. That has gone up tremendously in, 50 years. There was almost very little of it, in the 1950s, 60s. So that's gone up, and it's became more complex too. There's something called multi-layer plastic that we've been working on, multi-layer plastic rather. That is multiple types of plastic kind of melded together. And that's important because it keeps certain types of food fresher. And so that is really, really hard to do for anyone, much less, the kind of patchwork of rules that happen from city to city and county to county and stuff like that. So I think, we've really taken a consumer first approach to Ridwell. We have a member success team that answers questions. You can send them a photo. We just came out with an iOS app where you can see all the details of what we take. We can localize that. And so your version might look different than someone in another city that we operate where there are different categories. So we're really trying to bring a consumer first approach to it, because we know how hard it is to really understand where things go. And we want to kind of modernize the experience in ways that people are used to on the consumption side, because on the buy side, you have all kinds of options, but less innovation has happened on the getting rid of stuff side. And that's really the role that we're hoping to play.
Yeah. And I think I would love to understand, like, that's part of my mission, why I started this channel, is just trying to understand my own impact. I mean, you can't, I always say in business, you can't improve what you can't measure. Well, I don't know what my impact is. And I think it's awesome that you have an app where hopefully that's part of what you can put in there is like, hey, did you know you reduced this much CO2? Yep. And that's often something we thought about even at OfferUp. Like we've sold hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of items. And I think part of the reason people love our platform, one is it works, but there's a feel good feeling like, hey, I gave this something an additional life. Yeah. And so how do we reinforce that? I think we can still do that a lot better.
Yeah, we do in the app. We do show you your impact. So if your house had a pickup of Christmas lights and batteries and light bulbs, that all gets totaled up. And so you can see the statistics at your household, and then you can up level it, because we think there's a really strong community element to what we're doing as well. So you can see, what did the Seattle region, collect and save from landfills. And then you can up level it to the Ridwell community at large. And we're really, really proud that we recently surpassed 10 million pounds of material that was saved from landfills, which was a huge milestone for us, starting with a few pounds of batteries 4 years ago with Owen to get to 10 million pounds. It's been great to see in the app. It's hopefully a way to inspire people by showing that data.
Yeah. And I think, I applaud you for doing that regionally too, because I think if you can get enough people talking about your product, like I don't know how you go to market and scale Ridwell, but I forgot how we came across it, but I think it was some friends. But I think it's, if you think about, like I said, I think disposal happens at a regional level, and you can see these trends in cities. I don't know if most people knew this, but in the 50s, New York used to dump all of their trash out in the Atlantic. Like this all changed in the 50s, and they were just dumping all the trash in the ocean. And then finally, I think some city officials said, enough is enough. We're now going to do this, onshore. Every borough basically had their own way of disposing of trash. And then ultimately, New York, I think, is probably one of the best in terms of removing waste and being pretty efficient in how they do it. But they're now at a point regionally where they don't even dispose of it. They stick it on trains now. They move it to the Carolinas and everything to deal with this. Because part of it, we were trying to figure out how do we deal with this and send it overseas to China, but they don't even want it anymore. And so, again, I think as you look at how we deal with these challenges, they're definitely localized.
And even in Seattle, the landfill bound garbage goes to Eastern Oregon or something like that on trains. And there's not unlimited capacity in those places, and there's a landfill near Maple Valley. And so I think it's people understand that, see it, see the effects of it. Hopefully that'll lead to some change over time, and less of it going to those places.
Yeah, I think that I was looking at this stat that I found kind of interesting. We basically doubled our planet, the population of our planet since I was born. So I think in November we crossed 8 billion. We were at 4 when I was born. But we've 9x'd the amount of plastic production.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And so I think that's when you think of the just consumption and being able to utilize things and get things faster, things shipped to you. Another visual I'll have to pull up when I published this video was the plastic, the patch in the ocean that's floating around. That thing is now twice the size of Texas. That's how big that's gotten. And it's great to see a lot of companies coming up with ways to kind of clean that up. But I think how a lot of that accumulates in the ocean, it just, our rivers, our oceans, it just kind of gets washed out to sea and ultimately just kind of starts to congregate in that area there. So I think, again, what Ridwell is doing is clearly making an impact for some of that, for sure.
Yeah, we're trying.
I guess what are other tips or things you can think about that people can maybe think about? I think utilizing Ridwell is clearly a great way, but I'm also thinking about other things, like I was just drinking out of my hydro flask, for example, because my family and I think the hard part with sustainability is we're all time value. It's like it's such a headache, it's worth my time. And this took us a little while to do this, but we started to talk about it with our kids because, over 570 billion plastic water bottles are actually made every single year now. And, they were like, well, let's just start to reuse them. And so now it's kind of the thing where we have them by the front door when we leave the house, just like getting your shoes on. Where's your water bottle? So that's one thing we try to do, but I'm curious, do you have examples of that? Maybe either your own life or things you've learned through Ridwell that could be interesting?
Yeah, it's all about habits and making it easy, and we try to do that, at Ridwell, and also, in our family life. And I drink different beverages, but I got my water here as you do, and it's in the afternoon, but sometimes I still need some coffee, and so this is a reusable cup. And so how do you put those in places, as you mentioned, that you can not forget, and have with you? Oftentimes, like on a backpack, I have something called a Chico bag that has a little carabiner on it, and so if you're out and about and you get a few things at the neighborhood market, great, you've got a reusable bag with you. So that's, our family's about containers and how do we kind of have them on our person when we're at a place that would need one. We've done a little bit of experimentation there at Ridwell too. We did a pilot with Starbucks, the Seattle company, where, a cup like this, you could check out from them at the front instead of bringing your own. And then people could leave it in their Ridwell bin, and we would make sure it got brought back to them and recirculated. So we're hoping to do a lot more of that because we view the barrier as habits and convenience. And so our family has overcome some of them in some places, not always, but how can the Ridwell audience and our product and our platform do more of that so those barriers are even lower?
Mm-hmm. And I forgot how when you started with Ridwell, you seem to kind of continue to experiment with different kinds of categories over time. Did you start with the plastic? I know that's the big one I have.
Yeah, we started with the four we call four core. So plastic film, clothing and shoes, which we sometimes call threads, batteries and light bulbs. And then every 2 weeks we have something called a featured category. And those are very community and member driven. And so it's campaign yard signs, post-election. It's leftover Halloween candy. It is Christmas light strands that aren't working, portable devices. So we've expanded that one. We've always had that, but the breadth of what we've offered has gone up. What's been really fun to see is we've been in more areas and had more members, we can start to add categories that we couldn't have done before because a lot of it is volume. Prescription bottles we did recently, your orange plastic bottles, like if you want to recycle those, you need a truck full, for example. And so, as we've gotten bigger, we've been able to add to what our service is. And there's hopefully a lot more we can add in the future as we continue to grow and expand.
That's awesome. The Christmas light struck a chord with me. So I stopped doing Christmas lights and I feel like such a curmudgeon, but it was because I was so sick and tired of, it was actually the waste. So one year I was like Clark Griswold. Like one year my kids were young and I had the whole house all decked out. And the next year I pulled out a lot of these strands and I swear half of them didn't work. And I was like, this is just ruining the Christmas spirit for me. Not only do I have to go figure out the bulbs, but I'm like, I just bought a product that is just all twisted up that I'm gonna have to throw in a landfill. And so now I just I put a few lights up and that's kind of it. And so I think that's the challenge with some of these products that we make for mass production is how long are they going to last?
Indeed. Yep. And well, the cord is recyclable. And so if one of those few strands goes out this year, I think that's a featured category in your neighborhood in January. We always debate, do we do it early? Do we do it late? And so this year we opt to do it late. So we're coming for your lights in January.
Okay. I have a whole box that I don't use. So I'll definitely use that this time. The Halloween candy is an interesting one. What made you think of that one?
That's a fun one. And that's one that Owen and I did in the early days. And that kind of highlights the community impact of what we hope to offer as well. There is an organization called Birthday Dreams, which is based in the greater Seattle area. And they plan birthday parties for kids facing homelessness. And so it's people who are having not the easiest of lives. And really they believe, as I do, that a birthday party is something that can brighten anyone's day. And so what they do is post Halloween, they do a collection of leftover candy. And so they assemble little grab bags for people who would come to kids' birthday parties. And so it's a good way to rid yourself of something in your home that you may feel guilty about eating or leaving around, and have it go to a really good home, and then kind of seeing the story of the impact that your candy is having. So they've been a longtime partner of ours and one of our favorites.
Wow. So it's fascinating to hear how businesses evolve. I remember at OfferUp, I kind of similar to what you said when you started this, I had a room full of stuff that I was turning into my daughter's nursery, and it was mostly, vacuums and I don't know, old artwork and a chair or something. And I remember the first time I saw a car on OfferUp or a boat, and then it just kind of morphs into all these other things. So, it's kind of fun. I used to enjoy these little experiments that you run. Because you never would have thought, you probably didn't think at the beginning, I'm going to get into kids candy or,
right. But there's stuff that, others can use in your community, and the closer you can keep it, we found the better too. So the fact that candy goes from, if you're in a suburb of Seattle, goes to another suburb of Seattle, that's wonderful, better than traveling longer distances that it might otherwise. So we try to keep things as local as we can. And it's been fun to see that play out.
Yeah. And then talk about it, massive reduction in carbon. When you have things that are local. And you mentioned clothing too. I mean, clothing is a big one. I don't know if most people know, but 10% of all the CO2 emissions on our planet come through the manufacturing and distribution of clothing. And, the average t-shirt is 2,700 liters of water, about 30 bathtubs to make one t-shirt. And I don't think people mostly think through that. So there's the water aspect, but there's also all the manufacturing and the CO2 associated with it. And then on top of it now, we're at the state now where 25% of clothing just gets returned. And I think we're guilty of this too, where my wife just got a jacket the other day, but she wasn't sure what size it was. So, you buy two of them and you return one. And I think that's pretty common too. So clothing is a big one, not only in terms of just manufacturing, but also removing it, back to your point. Because the clothing is not just all cotton anymore. Sometimes plastics are weaved in there, and I think they're hard to decompose.
Indeed. Yeah. Lots more can be done in that category for sure. I've been a big fan lately. Patagonia has a section of the site called Worn Wear. And it's kind of like, how cars have, certified used, where they sort of make sure it's in good condition. And so that's where I try to buy, most of my stuff. It's used stuff from prior years that they've said, this is in like new or excellent condition. It's a great way to support, a brand that I believe in that has kind of built this reusability cycle into their product.
That's really interesting. There's a company I started connecting with recently called New Cycle. And what they're building basically is 100% recycled clothing from plastics. And they're, I don't know if this is public yet. They announced something they're doing with Zara, and they're doing something with Adidas, and the entire outfit is all recycled. So it's kind of interesting to see. I think the biggest challenges with some of these is clearly kind of the cost benefit, right? Are you able to do that in a economical way? So it's kind of fascinating. So what, so you're in quite a few different categories already at Ridwell. What are new ones, or what are ones that people come up with that get requested most often?
Yeah, you mentioned some of the statistics on plastic, and so that's what we get a lot of requests on. One in particular is something that we've been working hard on, and we just ran a pilot in a few of our markets called multi-layer plastic. And so if you get a Cliff Bar, or you get potato chips or something like that, those are often different types of plastic woven together. And that is really, really, really hard to recycle. We, though, have been scouring the country and figuring out who are the innovators on the cutting edge who can actually recycle that and do it in a type of recycling called mechanical recycling. And so we found a few partners. We ran a pilot, like I said, earlier this year, and we're really excited to roll that out. It was a huge success. Our members loved it, and we've seen really substantial reduction in their garbage, because this is kind of the last frontier that we hadn't offered, but we've been really working hard on and have plans to roll that out more broadly in 2023.
Wow, that sounds really exciting. So Ryan, I know you started in Seattle, but where is Ridwell, operating today?
Yeah, we did start in Seattle 4 years ago, and we've expanded quite far in the state of Washington. We go up to Bellingham, we go down to Olympia, we go east to North Bend, we get on ferries. So quite a bit of coverage in the state of Washington. We added Oregon next, and so we're in the Portland metro area. Then we added Denver. So we're in Denver, Boulder, other parts of the Colorado kind of Front Range area. Then we added Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities was our fourth market, then Austin, Texas. And we just recently launched in parts of the Bay Area. So down in California, we've been there for just a few months and have seen tremendous response from the people down in the Bay Area as well.
If people are interested in getting Ridwell in their neighborhood, is there a way to go to your website and start to request Ridwell be there?
There certainly is. And that's the key part of where we've operated, is where there has been demand and community interest. So they can go to our website, ridwell.com. They can enter their email address and zip code. If they're in an area we serve, that'll tell them that, and they could sign up there if they're interested. If they're an area that we're not yet in, it'll also give them that information and give them hopefully the tools to share with those around them, so we can expand to wherever people are. We think there's waste everywhere, and it's really on a mission to reduce it as much as we can.
Awesome. Great. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you starting this journey with me early. It's kind of a startup and a passion of mine. And so we'll see where it goes, but I really appreciate the time, and thanks for coming.
My pleasure. Happy to be here, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you.